Welcome to Municipal Affairs. Today we're diving into an issue that sits beneath our feet, literally. Across Canada, thousands of kilometers of asbestos cement pipes mains still carry drinking water to homes and businesses. These pipes were once a trusted, cost-efficient material choice, widely installed between the 1940s and the 1970s. But decades later, they're aging, they're breaking down, and they're raising serious questions about safety, infrastructure planning, and public health. Now, the central concern is this. As asbestos cement pipes deteriorate, they may release asbestos fibres into the water that we are drinking. And while Canada banned most asbestos use years ago, these legacy pipes remain buried in our municipal infrastructure systems. Some cities across Western Canada know exactly where their AC pipes are. Others have only partial records, and in many cases, the pipes are now approaching or even exceeding their expected lifespan, with breaks and failure rates climbing faster with other pipe material. Our guest today, Julian Branch, has been at the forefront of bringing this issue to the public attention. A former journalist turned advocate, Julian has spent years researching the science, tracking municipal records, and pressing governments to act. He points to peer-reviewed studies and government reports, some from the National Research Council, that warn of fiber release and urge more testing. Now, Julian argues municipalities need to adopt clear monitoring protocols, including regular water sampling and integrity inspections, so that we can truly understand the scale of the risk. At the same time, there's a financial reality. Replacing kilometers of underground pipe is no small task. For a mid-sized Canadian city, the cost could reach into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And yet, the longer municipalities wait, the greater the repair bills from repeated breaks, not to mention the uncertainty of public health. So today, our sit-down interview will be asking the questions: what prompted Julian's advocacy? How widespread are these pipes in Canadian municipalities today? And which cities in Canada are most at risk? We'll also be looking at solutions. What monitoring practices should be in place? What replacement strategies make sense? And what role provincial and federal governments play in helping municipalities act before the quiet infrastructure problem becomes a larger, massive crisis. Julian, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about this important issue when it comes to the infrastructure and the pipes that are underneath our ground in many municipalities across this great country, and particularly around asbestos cement water mains. I want to start, though, by getting to know a little bit about you and how you got involved in your advocacy work around this issue. So, what first prompted you and your interest in advocating around asbestos cement water mains?
Okay. Good first question. I'm trained as a journalist. I spent 25 years in journalism, and then I went into communications, where I worked as a director of communications for 3 premiers. So I've always been a curious fellow, and I know how to research, and I have a pretty good BS detector. So in 2012, I discovered that there are 600 kilometers of asbestos cement water pipe in Regina, Saskatchewan, where I live. I'd been researching another water-related topic, and I came across a 2011 Regina water and sewer budget, and was reading through that and discovered that half of the water pipes in Regina are made of asbestos cement. And I first thought that that would be the pipe wrapped in asbestos for insulation value. I was wrong. They mix the asbestos with the cement. 20% of the interior of these pipes is asbestos cement. Regina has so much asbestos cement water pipe that in 2003, the National Research Council established a facility here to investigate the pipes. The province paid $5 million for the center. The feds paid $19 million. The city paid $5 million, and the University of Regina paid $5 million. And they produced 10 studies, very specific, very detailed studies, scientific studies, on asbestos cement pipes. And all those studies say that the asbestos pipes are failing and breaking. The asbestos goes into the water, posing a quote unquote health concern. One 2010 study in particular says it causes cancer. Asbestos is not regulated in Canadian water. It is regulated in the United States of America. The EPA in 1992 decided to regulate asbestos in water because they have 600,000 miles of asbestos cement water pipes. The EPA says the long-term health effects from drinking asbestos from old pipes is cancer. Health Canada says there's no evidence that it causes cancer. All those questions made me very curious, and that's why I started looking into this area.
Most of the water pipes that are asbestos cement water pipes were put in 30, 40, even 50, 60 years ago when that was sort of the traditional pipe that was put into the
Mm-hmm.
ground. We are seeing a lot of aging infrastructure issues that municipalities are faced with today. Now, you said in your opening statement there that you started looking into this in 2012. Has it gotten worse? Are we at a critical point right now where if we don't do something 10 years ago, we're going to get into a bad place tomorrow? Because that's the big thing that many people might be tuning in going, what's going to happen tomorrow if we don't fix this?
Yeah, that's exactly what this problem is all about. If we ignore this problem, continue to ignore this problem, it will only get worse. The pipes, for the most part, have reached the end of their useful life. I'll give you an example of Regina, a concrete example. 1945, the first asbestos cement water pipe was installed. They stopped installing them in 1988. There have been 2,477 asbestos cement water pipe breaks in Regina between 2010 and 2022, almost 2,500 pipe breaks in a 12-year period. That's extraordinarily high. I'll give you another example. In 1977, a survey was done because we already knew about asbestos in water in America, and it came up to Canada and Health Canada. It's actually Health and Welfare Canada back in the day. 1977 got involved, and they did a comprehensive survey of Canadian cities. Do we have asbestos in our water? Well, at the time that test was done, Winnipeg, Manitoba, which has 743 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe, testing was done in Winnipeg water, and the levels were as high as 6.5 million fibres per liter in Winnipeg water, barely below the 7 million fiber standard in America. America says 7 million fibres per liter. You shut down the system, you get bottled water. We take out ads in newspapers and do all sorts of things because it's dangerous. In 1977, Winnipeg water had 6.5 million fibres per liter. By the mid 80s, there are reports out of Winnipeg saying that had risen to 12.3 million fibres per liter. Winnipeg stopped testing its water for asbestos in 1995. Prior to the cessation of Winnipeg testing, the levels in Winnipeg water were 19 million fibres per liter. So yeah, the pipes are deteriorating, the levels are going up, but Health Canada says it's okay to drink asbestos, so no one tests for it.
Why is that? And I hate to be so blunt and so cavalier about that question, but
Yeah,
why do you believe, and in your research that you have done since you sort of taken up this crusade, why do you believe Health Canada has not been doing its job around the fibers that are in our drinking water?
that's one of the main questions that people ask. And the blunt answer is cost and liability. A 1977 Science Council of Canada study shows that back then, 1977, Canada produced 40% of the world's chrysotile asbestos, the type of fiber that goes into these pipes. We produced 40% of the world's supply of asbestos. 95% of that was exported. So cost and liability. The cost to replace these pipes, give you an example. When Regina opened that research facility and started looking into this problem, in 2006, 2 years or that year after the first report, the city of Regina commissioned a study. How much would it cost to replace all of the asbestos, all of the water pipes in Regina, not just asbestos? It would have cost 300 million. Half of the pipes are asbestos cement. Back in 2006, it would have cost Regina $150 million to replace all of its asbestos cement water pipes. That price tag today is closer to $1.5 billion for the city of Regina. We have 600 kilometers of pipe. They say it will take 60 years to replace that pipe. That's unacceptable.
We've talked about two very big, large metropolitan cities, uh, Regina and Winnipeg, being bad actors. And I shouldn't say bad actors, but having this
Mhm.
issue under their feet. Are all municipalities across Canada in blame here, or is there some municipalities that are doing it right, or do you see asbestos cement based pipes in majority of these major metropolitan cities across Canada right now?
Well, I can tell you that on June 24th of this year, as part of the Core Public Infrastructure Survey, Statistics Canada released data on asbestos cement pipes. And I'll just give you a bit of a background on how they came to do that. In 2021, I became aware that Infrastructure Canada was doing its first ever infrastructure assessment. So I wrote to the then federal minister, Dominic LeBlanc, and I asked him whether or not asbestos cement pipes were included in that. And his office wrote back and said, no, they were not, but had advised me. They used the word advise. We advise you, if you're interested in that, you could check with the cities and provinces. Well, I thought that was a preposterous suggestion because I'm a private citizen. I don't have the wherewithal to do that. So I filed a parliamentary petition, and I had Elizabeth May authorize that. And I asked the federal government to include the pipes. And to my surprise, they said they would, and that the data would be out in late 2024. And the question was to each and every municipality on that infrastructure survey, how much asbestos cement pipe was in your system as of December 31st, 2022? So I came back to Stats Canada in late 2024 and asked if the data was ready. No, it wasn't ready. It would be ready in early 2025. So I came back in 2025 and asked them, and they said, we didn't have a question about asbestos cement pipes on the survey. And I said, no, you did. It's question number 24 there in your survey question. Oh, that question, Mr. Branch. Yeah, that data will be out on June 24th. And when you go to the Stats Can Daily for June 24th, you'll see that everything involved in that core public infrastructure survey was released. And at the end of that little news release they have there on June 24th on their website, it says statistics on asbestos cement pipe is available upon further request. So I further requested it, took a couple of weeks, and then they sent me a table, and the Stats Can table shows there are 13.7 thousand kilometers of asbestos cement water pipe in Canada. Yeah, I believe you're in Calgary. Let me just give you some stats for Alberta, if I may. On the Stats Can survey, Aquaterra has 170 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe. And when you look up Aquaterra, it does the water management for the city of Grand Prairie. Grand Prairie has 170 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe. Lethbridge, 165.6. St. Albert, 158.9. Lloydminster, 74. Leduc, 58. Drayton Valley, 42. Drumheller, 53. Calgary, 67. And the big winner here is Edmonton, which is serviced by EPCOR Water Services. And EPCOR Water Services says there are 1,044.3 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe in its system. And the last time I checked, Edmonton had approximately 1,050 kilometers of asbestos cement water pipe in its system. This is a very expensive issue to deal with. But as you stated, a few minutes ago, this was nobody's fault. When they first started installing this stuff, asbestos was known as the miracle mineral. It's nobody's fault that it's in there, but now what do we do now that we know about it?
So, and I apologize if this question comes off a little sideways, but I need to make sure I put this on the record here.
Yep.
Statistics Canada is saying this, which is understandable. Now, you just listed off a very large amount of numbers that I'm sitting there going, is that a lot? Is that a little? Like for Edmonton, is 1,000 kilometers of pipes a lot for them, or is that a little bit about them? In comparison to the communities that you just talked about, do you know if like that amount for Edmonton is 30% of their pipes in their community, 20% of their pipes, 58%, 98%? What is the amount in percentage? Because I think there's a little bit of a disconnect that people might say, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot because 1,000 kilometers to me, I can go from here to Prince Albert and back from Calgary, and I would be less than 1,000 kilometers. It seems like a lot,
Yep.
but when you're talking about pipes underground, they can be a lot for 1,000 kilometers in a small area.
Yeah, yeah. And for Edmonton, I can tell you it's about 25% of your pipes. Here in Regina, 600 kilometers, about 50% of our pipes. Swift current, I can't remember the exact number, but it's close to 75% of the pipes. It varies from community to community.
No,
One
and
interesting
understandable. I
thing,
just wanted to make sure that people
yeah,
understood the percentage because whenever I start talking numbers, I want people to understand the tangible item of it, but then rather than just here's a large number that you're going to talk about, like what is the percentage of the pipes that are in the community? So I apologize. Go ahead.
yeah. I was just going to point out that one thing that really strikes me about the StatsCan data, because it's the first time I was able to really have a good look at the provinces. For some reason, we all know where the vast majority of asbestos was mined and produced. It was Quebec. That used to be Asbestos Quebec. It's now Val d'Or. But it used to be that Quebec was responsible for 80% of the Canadian asbestos that was produced. 80%. The vast majority of asbestos cement water pipes are in the four western provinces. BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba have a great deal of asbestos cement water pipe. Quebec, by comparison, has a very small amount.
The the pipes, as we said earlier on in the interview, were installed back in the 40s, 50s, potentially even the 60s, when asbestos was that miracle chemical, as you say. Um, But the thing that most municipalities are looking at, and as we are the municipal based show, we talk to a lot of municipalities right now and we talk about infrastructure challenges. What is the deterioration rates and of break failure rates for asbestos cement based pipes right now? Are we seeing it happen more often? Because the end of life for a lot of these pipes were probably about 10 years ago. So municipalities are throwing money to fix an issue that they need to seriously consider fixing on a bigger scale rather than just a patchwork fix. What is the rate of deterioration for these pipes right now? Do you know?
Well, I'll tell you this. It's not scientific, but I think it's indicative of a growing problem. 5 years ago, I started a Google alert for asbestos cement water pipes. First year, nothing. Second year, couple of hits. I am now getting Google alerts on asbestos cement water pipes breaks on a weekly and usually a daily basis. And this isn't just in Canada, Chris. This is around the world. I'm getting contacted by people from Scotland. I went down to San Diego, California. They've got 2,000 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe they're breaking. In Brockway, Pennsylvania is a fascinating story because they put them in quite early. They're in a real dire situation in Brockway, Pennsylvania. Their strainers on the kitchen sink are clogged up with a gray sludge. That's raw asbestos coming out of your tap.
Ew.
The fiber count in Brockway, Pennsylvania is 1.3 billion fibers per liter, literally off the MFL chart. 1.3 billion fibers per liter. And that makes sense when you're seeing a gray sludge clogging up a kitchen strainer. All I'm trying to do is make people aware that this is a problem that's getting worse with time. The pipes are no different than any other water pipe. They deteriorate over time, but these ones shed asbestos fibers into the water.
So why don't you think people are doing anything about it? And I hate to be so cavalier about that question, but this is not an issue that has just magically appeared overnight. You've been raising the alarm. I've done some research on you and the work that you're doing, and it seems like it's not something that's come up overnight. When you speak to municipal leaders in these communities, or when you reach out to municipalities about what they're doing about these AC pipelines, what are you hearing from them? What is the reason behind them not actually going in? Is it just a financial issue, or is it a no one's talking about it, so we don't need to worry about it right now?
Yeah. And as you'll know, and as your viewers and listeners will know, water pipes are a municipal responsibility. So the federal government, Health Canada, says there's no evidence that drinking in asbestos is harmful. So the city says it's not regulated. Very few cities even test for asbestos in water. The city of Regina tests for asbestos in water. It says it's found none in the water. 2,500 asbestos cement water pipe breaks, and they've discovered no asbestos in the water. That's when I called the investigative news program W5. They came in, went to one major water main break, and found 370,000 fibres per liter. So it is cost, and it's also, well, the federal government says it's okay to drink asbestos. And that's what I find just about every single municipality relying on federal government saying there's no federal regulation. They say it's okay to drink asbestos.
Is there specific monitoring that municipalities can implement into their water systems today to ensure that we don't hit the level that is, as Health Canada has not said, there is a legal amount that needs to be in before we have to start selling people to drink bottled water? Is there monitoring that municipalities can do today to ensure that we do keep an eye on that level of asbestos that is in the drinking water? Or is there a program where the federal government allows, if the federal government has money that they can say, here's money for asbestos monitoring? Or is the federal government even just washing their hands of this entirely, saying it's up to the municipality? You want to monitor it, you monitor it yourself.
The federal government came up with its idea not to regulate in 1989. In
But
1989,
but I'm pretty sure we've had a few prime ministers since then. There's no one that's been on the record. Like, environmental standards have been like the practice of the last few years around the last prime minister.
mhm,
This new prime minister, it's a little different. We're still in early days, so I don't know. I don't want to paint a broad stroke, but environmental standards seem to be like the bee's knees that people were talking about over the last 10 years, but nothing happened.
no, I've approached every single major political party about this. The only one that has done anything about this is Elizabeth May. I went to a June 2024 news conference on Parliament Hill with Elizabeth May. She authorized a petition calling for these pipes to be included. No other party has touched this. The only one that's come close was the federal NDP, Peter Julian, when he was health critic in the dying days of the last government. Peter Julian said that the NDP is calling for a ban on asbestos cement water pipes as well. But I haven't heard anything from the new NDP leadership to that effect. It's a very expensive proposition. Let's just be honest. It's political. It's these pipes are buried out of sight, out of mind. Hopefully, more people will know about them after this program, but very few people even think that we have asbestos cement water pipes. Why on God's green earth would we have asbestos near our water? So, very few people know about them. The federal government says it's okay to drink asbestos, and that's where it stops. But the question that nobody is able to answer so far, because the US EPA regulated asbestos in 92 after 2 decades of study, rigorous studies. There's all sorts of studies out there on this. And they say it causes cancer. Go to the American Cancer Society website today, and you'll find a page called Asbestos and Cancer Risk. And on that page, it breaks down inhaling asbestos and ingesting or swallowing asbestos. And in that paragraph, it talks about such as water that flows through asbestos cement pipes. Why would the American Cancer Society have that on their page? So the question that nobody has been able to answer so far is how can drinking asbestos from old water pipes cause cancer in Americans and not Canadians?
So I'm going to ask the political question on the political show, so I apologize if it comes off a little bit
Yeah.
rude, and I apologize if it sounds weird, but we are not America. We are not America, and understandable, you're looking at sources from America. Are there
Mhm.
any reports, are there any studies in Canada that can link asbestos to cancer? Because there might be people say, and we're seeing it right now in our society, that Canada is not America and we should not take our advice from what Americans do or say. So, in your research, have you seen any Canadian studies or Canadian scientists who have come out and said what you have said, or is this just going off of what the Americans have said? Again, not trying to be combative, just want to put that on the record.
Yeah. No, there are no Canadian studies. And Health Canada reassesses these regulations every couple of years. They've done it 2005, 2013, 2018. They're currently reassessing whether or not to regulate asbestos in water right now. The public participation process is coming up. But I can tell you that Health Canada is of the firm belief that there is no or insufficient evidence to show that drinking asbestos causes cancer. Let me give you an example of another country that's doing research in this area. I think it's important outside of the US, and I would agree with you on most areas. I would agree with you that Canada's way better off than the US. Not on this one.
Okay.
Italy, the inventor of the asbestos cement pipe process was an Italian around 1900. Italy is full of old asbestos cement water pipes, about 125,000 kilometers of asbestos cement water pipe in Italy. Earthquakes in recent decades have wreaked havoc on underground infrastructure in Italy. Cancer rates are going up. Some of the best cancer research in this area is coming from Italy. One study in 2016 and one study in 2022 in particular. I don't know the details of those studies right now, but I can tell you very rigorous studies. The 2016 study essentially concludes this: there is too much cancer to be described or explained by inhalation alone. It has to be coming through ingestion of drinking water over long periods of time. That's the other thing, Chris. This is the latency period for ingested related or asbestos related disease can be up to 40 years. So it's taking its time. But as I said to W5 as I drove around Regina, Saskatchewan, think about a kid growing up here. You're born in Regina, you live in a neighborhood that has asbestos cement pipes, you go to school, you drink the water, you go to university. And if you look and you'll see that there is an alarming increase in cancer in young adults. It has to be explained somehow. I'm not saying it's the asbestos cement water pipes. I'm just saying it could be part of the problem. And we need to investigate it. That's why I'm raising awareness about this. Governments, and it's not just municipalities. There's nothing for municipalities to be scared of because the federal and provincial governments know all about this. They know that municipalities cannot afford to replace these pipes by themselves. We're talking about nation building projects. We announced nation building projects today. Pipelines. We're talking about pipelines. What could be more important than clean drinking water? How about an asbestos replacement pipe replacement plan for a nation building project? Now that we know about them from Stats Canada, that was the first step. Where are the pipes? What kind of condition are they in? That's why I wanted that information.
Is there any municipality that's doing it right now?
Um, I'll tell you, I know Regina, Saskatchewan best. What they're doing is replacing pipes. And when they replace them, they abandon the old pipes in place, because when you cut into an asbestos cement pipe, now the fibers are friable. The workers who are cutting into them are at risk of inhaling it. So what they're doing is abandoning those old pipes in place. And the other thing that Regina does is reline asbestos cement water pipes with an epoxy resin, like a sock through the inside of that pipe. But the problem is the pipes in Regina are impacted by our clay soil. If you know Regina at
Yeah.
all, you know we've got a very interesting soil, and it dries out and expands when the moisture comes. But when it dries out, it contracts and the pipes crack and they break like dry sticks in the winter. That's the problem here. And the relining debonds from the inside of the pipe. When that pipe breaks again in the soil, the liner comes loose and it doesn't do any good. It's a stopgap band-aid measure. They need to be replaced, unfortunately.
I think this is a very simple question, but I think it's an important one to ask is why is it important to do it now? Why is it important to, because you talk about the nation building project, which is understandable, but
Mm-hmm.
we are about to head into a municipal budget cycle where municipalities are going to be looking at their asset management programs, and they're going to be looking at what the infrastructure that needs to be replaced in the next few years. Speak to the counselors out there that are listening to this. Speak to the
Okay.
candidates who are running in Alberta who are about to put their name on the ballots and say, okay, what's my main priority? Why is it a priority, and why should it be a priority number one for a lot of municipalities right now to do this change, to start looking at these pipes, not just as an afterthought, not just as a, we're going to patch it, but we're going to actually replace it?
Yeah. It's important because the problem will only continue to get worse. The older these pipes get, and we've known that for 20 years. When that research, and I would ask people to go to that research that came out of the University of Regina in 2005 to 2012, 10 studies, and they all point to the fact that the pipes are deteriorating, they're getting worse, they're breaking, and the asbestos is going into the water. That research is summed up in a one-pager from those scientists in 2010, who urged the city of Regina to take immediate, urgent, those two words are in that one-pager, immediate, urgent steps in order to, quote, protect the safe drinking water in the city of Regina. That was 2010. That's 15 years ago now. At the rate we're going, it will take another 50, 60 years to replace all the asbestos cement water pipes in Regina. That's way too long. We need to pay attention to this issue. We do with lead pipes. Lead, everybody knows about lead drinking connectors or service connectors and you know how it's bad. Lead is regulated in Canadian water. Asbestos is not regulated in Canadian water. It needs to start at the top with regulation. We need to stop pretending this isn't a concern and finding medical reasons not to look at it. We need to start following the research that's being done in other countries, paying attention to it, and prioritize this as an issue.
So, for those who want to look at those reports from 2010 from the University of Regina, the links will be in the show notes below. Hopefully, Julian will be able to supply those so we can make sure that they are in the show notes. Or if you're watching this, head over to the Cross Border Network website at crossbordernetwork.ca, click on the show, and you will find the links in that page as well. Now, everything comes down to money. In this world that we live in, unfortunately, everything comes down to money. Now, I've spoken to many municipal leaders across the Canada, and the thing I hear often is they don't have enough money. Now, 60 years is a long time to wait to fix this issue. And that's saying that if we can have no breaks in that time, you can get it done in 60 years at the course we can do. How do we pay for this issue to be resolved sooner than 60 years? Is it an all hands on approach to it? Does the provinces, does the federal government, do the municipalities all have to come together and say, okay, we're going to do this, because the municipalities will say they can't do it alone because that will bankrupt them.
That's absolutely exactly what needs to happen. And I tell that to every politician I talk to. Municipalities cannot do this alone. And we don't need a patchwork quilt of trying to solve this problem. What we need is a roundtable. The feds, the provinces, the municipalities, the universities all getting together. And when you look at that, that's the frustrating thing, because we were on that track in 2003 when we opened that research center. We were coming up with all sorts of innovative ideas to get robots crawling. We had the Regina pipe crawler, and it was crawling through pipes to look at the condition of these pipes and all sorts of things. And then that research center just quietly shut down in 2013. Just quietly shut down. But all the studies are still there showing what could and should have been done. And that's the frustrating thing. I mean, this problem will not go away. Absolutely, we need to get all three levels of government sitting at the same table and paying attention to this issue. And sadly, it won't until we get federal regulation. I mentioned the StatsCan report 2 weeks after
I'm
that
gonna
report.
I'm gonna challenge you on that a little bit, and I apologize to interrupt
Yep,
again, but I'm
yep,
gonna challenge you. The
sure.
provinces, you live in Saskatchewan, I live in Alberta, and we are hearing
Mhm.
over and over again, we need provincial autonomy. We need the provinces to do with what they want. Now, last time I checked, the province of Saskatchewan and the province of Alberta both have their own individual health departments. They have Alberta Health Services and Saskatchewan Health Services. The provinces do have a role, and they can say and they can mandate, because I often hear on from municipal leaders, the provinces look at municipalities as children of the provinces. So if the provinces wake up tomorrow and say, we're going to mandate this, that you no longer have asbestos cement based pipes in your community, the municipalities have to do it. So while the federal government and Health Canada can work on it, what role do the provinces have to play to ensure this happens? Because we're seeing a lot of autonomy talk right now. And if the provinces wake up tomorrow, like I said, and say, we're going to do this, municipalities have to jump. How much of responsibility is it not just on the federal government, but also the province to ensure this gets fixed? Because you worked for three
Absolutely.
premiers.
Yeah, huge role for the province. And let me give you an example of here in Saskatchewan. We've got the Water Security Agency, the
Yep.
WSA. That review that is currently underway by Health Canada, WSA made a point of saying, we want that to happen. That was the Water Security Agency in Regina, Saskatchewan, or Moose Jaw, that said, we want that review to happen. And it's happening. So that's the sort of role that the provinces can play. The municipalities, the federal government, and the provincial governments all have a big role to play here.
What policy levers or regulations would you like to see implemented? because that's the one thing I often hear from politicians is if you have an issue, come to me with a solution. What's the policy levers and regulations that you would like to see in place tomorrow if Mark Carney, the Minister of Environment, I forget her name right now, I apologize, Minister, or someone from the provincial governments are listening, what policy and regulations would you like to see in place?
Well, I'm calling for regulation of asbestos in Canadian water. And that comes from the federal government. As you know, I call it the circular conundrum because the provinces have the federal, provincial, territorial drinking water committee, and they're the ones that set the standards. So they need to sit together with the federal government and figure out how we regulate asbestos in Canadian water. And the other things I'm calling for at a municipal level, because the cities, I can tell you that the city of Calgary has 67 kilometers of asbestos cement water pipe. It's mainly in Parkland, Midnapore, and Lake Bonavista. I wrote the city councillor in that area in Ward 14, and I asked about testing. I spent several weeks going back and forth with his assistant. I never spoke with the actual councillor in Ward 14. They eventually put me off to the media relations department, and I had three questions. Have there been water main breaks, asbestos cement water main breaks in Lake Bonavista? Was the water tested for asbestos? And were residents informed that they had a broken asbestos cement water pipe? The answers are there were two asbestos cement water main breaks in Lake Bonavista in the past couple of years. The residents were not informed, and the water was not tested for asbestos. That's why we need, it's all about, do I have an asbestos cement water pipe delivering water to my home? What are my options? Do I get a filter? Do I get bottled water? What do I do? I have an asbestos cement water pipe delivering water to my home in Regina, Saskatchewan. The city of Regina has confirmed that. 6-inch asbestos cement water pipe.
So what do you do? Do you drink bottled water or do you filter it?
I have a filter. I have a filter on my fridge where I get my water, but here's the problem. The only thing that'll really do this is a good, expensive reverse osmosis system, and it has to be at the entry point to your home because I'll go back to those National Research Council reports. They say that it's a health concern in the water, but there's an argument about ingesting that. So what NRC says, did you have a shower today? Because now the water's turning into a vapor and you're breathing it in. Do you have a humidifier in your home? Vaporizer, you're breathing it in. You know, that's a major problem. It's not just the drinking water. It's the showering and the humidifiers. And that's been known for 35 years since Winnipeg, when this first became an issue in Winnipeg, they looked into humidifiers. So a good RO system is the only safe way to go.
So you're living this right now, and there might be people who are also living this, and I might be living with it right now as well, and I don't know because it's not something I thought about until you just said ask. And I should ask because it is something that we should all be taking seriously, the health and well-being of ourselves. What can the average resident, and I hate, I'm going to rephrase that because I hate saying the average, what can residents do to make sure this is a priority? Because in Alberta right now, we have elections and people are asking candidates, they're knocking on doors. What should residents be asking for around transparency around where these pipes are in their communities, whether it be in Grand Prairie, in Edmonton, in Calgary, Lethbridge, Leduc, Beaumont, everywhere across this, or even the smaller communities? Because I'm assuming not just the large communities have these issues, it's also the smaller communities. And talk about 100 kilometers of pipe, that's almost all their pipes in their community.
Yeah, yeah. There are communities right throughout Alberta. A couple of things you can do. One of the things is talk to your local city councillor. Ask them point blank, do you know anything about asbestos cement water pipes? Are they in our neighborhood? My neighborhood in Regina, Saskatchewan, about 95% of the pipes are asbestos cement water pipes. There's also open data sites on several large municipalities. You can go on the open data site yourself, and that's how I found Calgary. All you have to do is go on the open data site, type in public water mains, type in the type of material, and by the way, it's commonly known as AC. A lot of people don't call it asbestos cement. They take out the word asbestos and just say, oh, AC pipes, AC. And that's how you can find them in Calgary. And they're all over the city of Calgary. It's not just those three main communities that I talked about, because your water guy, a fellow by the name of Roy Brander, was your infrastructure engineer in Calgary for 20 years. And he wrote in to an op-ed that was written a couple of years ago and explained that's how I know about Lake Bonavista and Parkland, because Roy wrote in and explained, oh yeah, the pipes have been in Calgary. I was the infrastructure manager for 20 years. We got 67 kilometers of them. They were in Parkland and Lake Bonavista. And so I looked up Roy Brander, and in 2001, he delivered a presentation to the American Waterworks Association where he gave the history of the water main situation in Calgary. And he referred to asbestos-cement water mains being installed in Calgary at that time as a brief flirtation in the South End. A brief flirtation in the South End. They're all over the city of Calgary. The first asbestos-cement water pipe was installed in 1955. Those pipes are way past their prime. And here's an interesting thing, and Calgary got me interested because I'm born and raised in Calgary, by the way. That's what caught my interest in Calgary. But that massive primary main break that you had in Calgary, the feeder main break in Bowness, asbestos cement pipes are very rarely used for large feeder mains. It's usually the 6-inch diameter and the smaller pipes right in front of people's homes. City of Saskatoon has 345 kilometers of asbestos cement water pipe, about a third of its system. But it also says on its FAQ page, we have 6 kilometers of asbestos cement primary main. If a primary main goes down and asbestos contaminates that main, it contaminates the entire system. It's an extraordinary situation. And by the way, 345 kilometers, city of Saskatoon estimates it would cost $800 million to replace.
It's only just under $1 billion. That's not that
Just,
bad for Cynthia Block.
you
Come
know,
on, Mayor Block, let's do this.
there we go. So that's why you need the three levels of government getting involved. This cannot be done by municipalities alone. They've been in South Africa. South Africa has a ton of asbestos cement water pipes. I'm getting daily stories on asbestos cement water pipe failures in South Africa. They're not worried about cancer in South Africa. They're worried about drinking water. They have no water. In cities like, look up Pretoria, look up Johannesburg. There are daily stories about their pipes failing. It's coming to a city and a province and a country near us if we don't pay attention. That's all I'm trying to do, is head this off. It's nobody's fault that the pipes are there, but now that we know about it, what are we doing about it?
Are you optimistic though? Because I don't
I
want
am
people to think,
optimistic.
okay,
Chris, I am optimistic. I've been at this a long time, and I'm starting to see some positive developments. It's nothing I can talk about right away, but I hope in the very near future, you and I can come back on a show and say, see, someone paid attention and they're doing something. I'm very hopeful in
so
the
what's
not too distant future.
so what's the next steps then? Because coming on shows like this is great, but
Mhm.
I'm not trying to boost my little ego here, but I'm going to blow smoke up my own butt here for a second. But we talk to municipal leaders. So I'm going to start asking the question in rotation when I sit down with municipal leaders, whether they be in Alberta, Saskatchewan, or across Canada. But what can we do to make sure this is on the national radar? Because if CTV, CBC, Global News, the Calgary Herald, Star Phoenix, Regina Leader Post don't start doing a weekly story on this, it's going to just be under the radar and most people won't know. Because I would be hard pressed, and I say this as someone who lives and breathes municipalities, that the average resident knows what asbestos cement pipes are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And a part of it is the media. You're trained as a journalist. I'm trained as a journalist. We've seen huge changes in the media landscape over the last couple of years. Leader Post has done stories on this. W5's done stories. The local radio and television. I just keep talking about it, raising awareness. But you mentioned political leaders. And we need to talk to the political leaders, and they need to start taking this seriously. I know you've had Randy Golden on this show, the head of SUMA. Let me just tell you a story about the National Research Council and SUMA. The organization that started that research was called Communities of Tomorrow. And they were responsible for those NRC studies, Communities of Tomorrow. In 2013, shortly after this issue came to light, Communities of Tomorrow put out a news release with SUMA saying they had partnered And 6 short months later, on June 26, 2013, they put out another news release, SUMA, saying that the partnership had dissolved, but SUMA was responsible for archiving all the research and all the studies that Communities of Tomorrow was involved with. What could be more important than 10 studies saying asbestos cement water pipes can cause cancer? SUMA was asked about those reports and said, we have a variety of important documents, information on research projects and reports created by Communities of Tomorrow will now be held on the SUMA website. And that was June 26, 2013. If you ask Randy Golden about that, she will tell you they know nothing about asbestos cement water pipes, never had any reports, never seen any research on this, don't know a thing about it. It's time for groups like SUMA and all municipalities to take this issue seriously. Stop pretending it's not there. Stop pretending it never happened. Look at those research reports, because those were done by top-notch scientists. We paid millions of dollars for that research. Why aren't we paying attention to it? It's mind-boggling.
So my final question before I let you go, actually I have two final questions before I let you go.
Mm-hmm.
What would you want people to know about what you're doing, your advocacy work, about asbestos cement pipes that we have not talked about that you want to make sure people understand about what you're doing?
There's a great deal of misinformation out there about these pipes, and people need to know. And I would ask people to do their own research. Don't believe what I'm saying. Look into this, study this issue, and find out about it. Like I say, the vast majority of your listeners and viewers will be hearing about this for the very first time. It comes as a shock. I know it can be overwhelming. I know, believe me, I didn't think I was going to be spending my retirement years doing this. But once I saw it in 2012, I just can't unsee it. This is just common sense. The rationale for the EPA for regulating asbestos, because there's this discussion about, is it okay to drink asbestos? We know it's bad to inhale, but is it okay to drink? Well, the rationale from the EPA is very simple, and it's perfect. It says when you inhale asbestos, the first thing you're going to do is clear your throat. You've just ingested asbestos. Doesn't matter if it comes out of your tap or if you're swallowing the sputum. Ingested asbestos is just as harmful as inhaled asbestos. That'd be my main point.
So how can people learn more about your work, your advocacy? How can people get in hold of you? If there's a municipal leader who wants to reach out and discuss this a little bit further, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, my email is branch, just like on a tree, initial J, 586 at gmail.com. Branch J 586 at gmail.com. Look up on YouTube, Something in the Water, W5. Plug in asbestos cement water pipes in your community. When W5 came out, journalists across the country fanned out and looked at their water systems. And the main thing that came back was Health Canada says it's okay to drink. So everybody just dropped the story. It's federal regulation that needs to change. That's the number one thing that needs to change. And then we can start testing and finding out whether or not there's asbestos in the water.
Julian, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending the last almost 50 minutes with me to talk about this important issue and why people should be asking questions in this important municipal election, and to their municipal leaders, whether they be here in Alberta, Saskatchewan, or across Canada. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time and doing this with me. Greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm glad to have the opportunity, and thanks for taking the interest.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics and infrastructure. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or by visiting us on YouTube at Cross Border Network. To learn more about the peoples and the communities and learn about the links that we talked about in today's episode, visit us online at crossbordernetwork.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Till next time, stay informed. Stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.